Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to Out of the Park Baseball 23. This is episode number 6, and we are navigating our first off season. Of course, we kind of get double off seasons in this one, but realistically, the tournament is pre-season, so it's during your spring training time essentially, and therefore it's into the new year. So we're gonna get through that off season and see what happens the first time. This is that first go. I think it's going to be a little bit of a unique one with the first year with the expanded database of players all just being created and whatnot. I do like our new goals for the upcoming year. Don't suck completely. Okay. I like that. That's good. My reputation is poor, but it was non-existent, so at least I'm a known quantity in the world now. Step number 1 is salary arbitration. Now, for those unfamiliar with the sport, you have a strong players union that leads to a whole lot of unique conditions that most sports don't see that keep player contracts growing the longer you spend in the league, essentially. And without going into crazy detail on the matter, arbitration is if you've played long enough, your due increases while you're still under team control. And those increases depend on where you fall statistically within the league. These guys were all on league minimum. The 5 players that we have that are arbitration eligible, you can see that they're all between the age of 27 and 29, meaning they're not so young. They have some experience, but they're definitely not long-term players. You can see Bradshaw and Fussell, a couple of top pitchers. Fussell was our top guy this year. His ERA essentially half of what Bradshaw was. His WHIP was a half point lower. His wins above replacement was +3 in comparison to Bradshaw. So Bradshaw barely making above minimum, not even reaching 1 million, not doubling his salary. It's not bad. For Fussell, he did a lot better, and so he's definitely due a much bigger increase, and we can alter these amounts on what's being offered. I'm not going to, because all of these amounts are actually pretty low. Sam Nance was the other player who actually did pretty well for us. You can see his wins above replacement was fairly solid. Our only minor league contract that is expiring, and that's largely due to age, and he was quite awful even at the AAA level, is Castro. I tried to trade Castro, but nobody wanted him, so he's just gone. And then Almonte, who missed the entire season and was, I think, the second highest paid player that we had on the entire roster, but he's also in his 30s, so those two are out, and there's already a good chunk of the pay increases covered right off the bat. Coaching staff for our highest tier is all locked in through one more year for contracts, but our minor league system has a number of vacancies. We had a single manager vacancy, so I promoted somebody up the food chain, leaving one opening at the rookie level, and I just landed the best candidate that was out there. We have Michael Spina, and he is just 35. He's a rookie himself when it comes to managing, but look at the quality here. Outstanding for development. Decent for mechanics, pitching, in-game running. Excellent at aging, not that that matters for us, but teaching hitting. Outstanding for defense. Legendary for infield and outfield defense. And then decent for team running. I mean, this is an outstanding manager on the list, especially for a first-year guy. And this very well in a handful of seasons could be the manager at the senior level for this team. Really happy with this one, and hiring good staff can really make a big difference within your organization. Is one of those things that can often go under the radar, but truth be told, it's mega. For those unfamiliar, so you have your front office, you have your personnel tab, and here is all these remaining guys. And from here, it focuses on what their personality is, what they're getting paid, what their reputation is. And for me, reputation means very little overall. This is a pretty unimportant set of statistics, because like Spina's totally unproven, and yet when you break it down, you get inside, this guy is so much better than the others around him. And like I said, he's going to fly up the food chain very quickly for us. But you can see at the moment, now that I've filled the manager vacancies, our pitching coaches and our hitting coaches are all vacant. So starting with pitching coaches, right, you're going to have just this big random list, and a lot of people are going to go straight to something like reputation. There's one guy with an average reputation. And then the relationships might stand out. Their style might stand out. But otherwise, you've got to actually get in here and kind of filter it in the right way, like getting the coach rating and maybe getting it down to specifically pitching coaches. And then certain things aren't going to matter, like teach pitching. That does matter. Mechanics is going to matter. So development, mechanics, teach pitching. Randy Leak, unproven, no job. But there's our guy. There's our first guy we're going after. Arbitration rulings are in. So simply put, the arbitration team makes an offer, player makes a demand. A neutral arbitrator then makes the decision based on where that player lies and which one is more representative of where they do belong, where they have earned their place in terms of salary. And 4 out of 5, they ruled in favor of the team valuation. The one that we lost, essentially, the one case we lost was Jamar Fussell, and his asking price was $500,000 more than what we had placed on the table. And that doesn't surprise me, as he is now, or at least currently, the club's ace. 2.75 is actually really, really cheap for a player. But of course, we're not a regular league, are we? So how that's all going to work, as we're not the proper major league, we're the third tier. We obviously can't really afford to hang on to Flint. We're going to have to get rid of him probably immediately this season, possibly before the season ever even gets underway, if we're going to have any room to maneuver and continue to build the club. Flint might be a great individual asset to have on the club, but we need a whole team of assets, not one individual player. We've seen the impact, Pajero last season, that one player can have. They can make a difference. You're going to win more games with one strong individual player. But with 2 strong individual players, we were still right near the bottom of the league. It takes a team to win, and not just a superstar. Down to a single pending offer, but otherwise our coaching staff is now in place with significant upgrades across the board through the minor league system, outside of a handful of managers that still need to go. That's going to then filter into the top team come next season, as those guys are all going to be on expiring contracts this year. Same with all those other managers. So we will kind of complete that turnaround in one more season of going from a very mediocre staff to probably the best in our league. And that, along with committing to player development, should start seeing a real difference in players reaching potential a lot faster. So free agency has begun, and there is some incredible talents out there, of course, from the major league level, proper major league level, that is just way over our heads in terms of quality. Just way too good for us, and we can't afford them. So it's going to be tricky on how that one starts to work out. And I think I'm going to have to kind of filter things down, looking for players that have potential but aren't there right now. Now, theoretically, we have no money for free agents, but we actually still have a ton of money in play, especially if we move Flint along. Flint is making up 40 out of our 53 million in salary for next season right now, and he's a pretty easy piece to move along, as there's plenty of teams at a higher level that would be interested in taking him and his salary on. After filtering out players over the age of 25, after filtering out players that are hard to sign, this is now where we're looking. We're looking at a number of players with some potential that could contribute. Quite a few that are probably minor league contract eligible for us, and then a few that actually have demands. But looking at the demands, $2.5 million is the most of any of these. So looking at pretty much all of the 2-star guys and above, being that they're all under 25, being that they all have potential, and realistically, Ramingo Robles might be the only one who's actually ready right now, major leagues. But a couple guys that would be 40-man roster, maybe AAA kind of situation, or maybe they're major league ready. I don't know. We have good scouting accuracy on all but the one at the top of the list, Kamai. And after looking in Kamai's card, my rating, of course, is low in terms of accuracy. But the OSA, which is kind of your generic scouting across the league that everybody can view, it says that he's a 1.5, 2.5. 2.5 is still the potential that we're looking at right now. So he's still worth signing, especially when he's only 22 years of age. So I'm probably going to take this entire upper list and offer to each and every one of them. Fantastic news. So the initial meeting with all of them, including all of these guys, the 5 of them that have actual demands beyond what's your standard minimum contract of $550,000, every single one of them, like I said, including those guys, are all accepting minor league contracts, or at least we agreed to terms on minor league contracts. And then those 5, if they are promoted to the major leagues, that is the contract that they would then receive instead of the league minimum. So they have negotiated kind of a future fee, essentially, but they would be on minor league contracts initially. So the entire group was open to minor league contracts, and that's fantastic because, like I said, only one of them might actually be major league ready at this stage. All right, now already realizing that Flint's money is going to be a problem this season, I knew we could get away with hanging on to him for the year and having that long-term contract, and somebody's going to want that. But I don't want to wait too long to think, at least, about what options are out there. So I am shopping him along with Aaron Akins, who was the second third baseman that we had on the roster. And now that we've traded with Luke Williams, there's 3 guys at third base, and Aaron Akins struggled the most out of the bunch. His contact is not good, his contact rating. So he did strike out quite a bit. So packaging those 2 together, which is one of our 3 28-year-olds and 2 29-year-olds on the active roster, and that's it. There are no players above the age of 30, and this would leave us with Fussell as the only player within a year of that, meaning our long-term prospects of building the team up are already looking a lot better as we've gotten so much younger. So I'm going to take a look through, but you can already see there's some big prospects that are being offered. I mean, the number 17 prospect, shortstop's always a good one, and they don't want any money. So there was really only a couple trades that even offered much of anything respectable in return, and one standing out a bit more than the other, and that is giving us 2 prospects that both have a fair amount of potential. So all outfielders coming back from Matanzas Crocodiles, who we've actually already struck a deal with once, but 2 prospects inside the top 200. It's not great. Actually, it's really not great, but one of them is very much major league ready right now in Valadares. the right fielder, as he could probably contribute immediately. And they want very little cash in return from us. And this wipes out that payroll that we have. I mean, that's $32 million this year for Flint. So that, that drops our salary right on down to a low level and gives us plenty of flexibility in salary. It's not the greatest numbers, 258. I mean, this is not an outstanding player by any means. 50 on the contact, gap power, home run power, it's all okay stuff. Base running's really good, stealing's really good, but he doesn't have great speed. His outfield range, error, arm are all decent. He's a decent right fielder, a decent left fielder. Like, nothing here goes, ooh, I want to have this guy. If he was $3 million, I'd be in a heartbeat. He wants 22, and that's too much. But can we sign him and then very quickly move on from him and get, more prospects back in return? I very quickly went in and withdrew the offer for Godson as I caught one very key detail that I had initially missed, and I had just clicked submit when I caught it. We would potentially lose a draft pick. I don't know what round. It's usually from the top 3 rounds that are vulnerable from that. So one of those things that occur in the major leagues is if you lose players to free agency because you can't afford to keep them, one of the things that tries to help balance the league is that if you are, like, say, the New York Yankees, who are always overpaying and stealing players away from smaller markets, what happens is you end up losing draft picks from the first few rounds, and then compensation picks go to the teams that lose those guys. Now, the value in return is definitely not the same as what's gained from signing. If you're signing an all-star to your team, somebody who's going to make you significantly better and make you win more baseball games, that's an obvious impact. That's something big. Losing a draft pick from a player that's not going to be a part of your organization for 4 or 5 years and may never be a pro at all, let alone an all-star, is a smaller price to pay. However, for us right now, I care about those draft picks, and that guy was all about signing him to then flip him. That's not going to help us if we're losing a draft pick in the meantime. So no, not happening. I would go after players that could help us with that flip for prospects idea, but not if it involves losing draft picks. All right, so far I haven't had much luck on getting those guys signed. Some of them have gotten offers that involve money with other teams, and I've just kind of let those go, except in a couple cases where I'm going, yeah, that's somebody I want and that I'm willing to pay for. In this case, I found somebody that I want, that I'm willing to pay for. First base is a bit of an issue for us, and this is a guy that has some potential that's still out there, has some talent already that could contribute, could help the squad, and really cost us very little. We got him for $1.4 million on a 2-year deal, or 3-year deal. Well, this is annoying. Yesterday we had very high scouting accuracy on Omar de los Santos. Today we have average scouting on him, and he's gone from a 1.5-star current to 2.5-star potential to a half-star current, 1.5-star potential, and we gave him a major league contract because he had other offers, and we came in, it was for league minimum, and so we came in a couple $100,000 above that. That's disappointing. It was only a 1-year deal, so it's not like it's going to cost us a lot. One of the things that stood out for me was how he was durable and how he is a good defender and how he's got some speed. but this is definitely not anywhere near the same level of player that we were looking at, that we signed, that we apparently had very high scouting accuracy on, but now we don't, and the OSA don't like him either, but also average. So no idea how that one just happened, how that fell through in an instant, because that was not based on limited scouting accuracy. It was supposed to be very high. All right, so I started with the high potential, cheap, easy to get into players. I'm starting to look into the free agent market and really try to lock down something that's going to cost us a little bit, could help be elements of the team that make us stronger, or at the very least be tradable assets, right? Something along those lines. So I'm getting into players that are a little bit older now, that demands are a little bit higher, and we have signed the first of those in Alex Marcial, third baseman, $3.5 million. So again, a little bit more in terms of compensation, but it's a 1-year deal on this one. So $3.5 million, 2.5 star player. We're looking at okay contact, with a 40. It's not great, but for our level, that's okay. Has a little bit of home run power, has a better eye, so that they'll draw some walks. A really good infield arm. It's another third baseman. I'm not looking necessarily at positions. I'm looking at filling out players that are signable, and therefore that means some players will become trade assets for us. This guy is very much a third baseman. He could play second, but he's very much a third baseman, especially with that 80 of an infield arm. You want him on that hot corner, where he could then send a ball to first base with some juice to it, some gusto, to where he's gonna get that out at first. From second, you don't need the infield arm as much. You want the range. You want somebody not committing an error. An infield arm is still nice to have there, but this is very much a third baseman. All right, here's one big thing about being in this lower division. There were players, we had 2 of them, that were big-time players that didn't belong at the level. Most of the players on most of the teams had expiring contracts, and so there's a big shakeup in the league this season. Big shakeup. Now, behind my face cam, the bottom 5 teams in the league have lost anywhere from 13 to 25 wins above replacement, or at least at this point in late January of the off season. So there's some teams that lost some really, really talented players. As we climb up that ladder, the middle of the table is where we stand at -5 wins above replacement. Now, virtually all of that has come from the loss of Flint. Flint had about 5 wins above replacement. In fact, I think it was about 4.5. But some of the signings we've had are guys that were so-so, right? They were okay. They weren't bad players, but they weren't good players. Now, based on the overall drop within the league, we're looking at literally just 3 teams that are somehow better than they were a year ago: Mesa, Ottawa, and Caracas. So those are the only 3 teams that have somehow weathered that storm of the outgoing talent going to the leagues above us, and our league starting to kind of settle in as the 3rd-tier league. The good news for me is we got rid of Flint, and yet we are somehow still 12th on the list at the moment. That's good. The anticipation as to what was to come, everybody else is suffering massively, and meanwhile we are actually looking okay for the time being. Yeah, here is that move. So we have 3 players lost, but Reuben Flint at a 5.4, that's what's gone out. Meanwhile, Valadares, gave us 0.3 in return, and Martial has given us 0.1 gained. Overall, we've gained 6 players, but we are, I think, going in the right direction, right? Flint, that was an inevitable move, and yes, that has essentially made us worse, but just take the next team on the list, Guadalajara, and look what's happened. They've gained 1 decent free agent signing, but then they're losing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 talented players. All right, so the draft pool was finally revealed today, as we're now 120 days in advance of our first draft. Now, we have a ton of money set aside for signing guys, so that part's good. We definitely want potential, and we want to get these scouting reports kind of locked in. Well, the good news is, however, we've managed to do it either through having enough financial backing into the topic. We actually have high or very high scouting accuracy on the entire draft pool, with the exception of a fairly small group of players that we have average scouting on, which all of the potential ones in there, according to our scouting, I've gone ahead and requested scouting reports on that group. There are definitely players with potential. That's what I'm more interested in, as opposed to players that are going to help you win now. But there's obviously a handful of those. You figure those are going to be long gone before the draft ever gets down to us, assuming that we'll have somewhere right around the 61st pick. All right, so one move that I'm happy I've made was I lowered the ticket price just a little bit, 75 cents per ticket. That has so far looked to pay off for us, because last year we were 27th in attendance at 1.6 million for the season. Our average attendance was 22,000. This year, it's predicted that our season ticket is going to increase by 4,000, so season ticket sales, and then the overall attendance is projected to be almost 9,000 higher than a year ago. I'm happy. I'm really happy with that. So there's one thing that has panned out for us. I've already increased our development budget a bit, but I think I'm going to keep going even higher with it. Staff payroll is up by 1.2 million. Projected player payroll is up by about 6-7 million right now. That's not much. That's not much at all. Scouting budget is fairly good. We have money to sign international amateur free agents, and we have plenty for the draft expenditures, like 15 million more than what's even expected for the slots. So at the moment, anyway, we are well within our budgetary constraints for the year, and it looks like we're going to have even more revenue than last year. So let's go ahead and commit even more to the development budget. Push that up to 15 million, add an extra 5 million to what we were already offering. Even with an increase of 7 million in terms of player payroll, that is still lowest in the league. So at the moment anyway, we are doing a really, really good job of handling the finances and keeping us at the bottom end, giving us that wiggle room to do something. Also, since we're talking about money, in terms of where we're at, we have guys that are going to be, like arbitration eligible. We have guys that are on multi-year contracts, but for those league minimums, most of the team is on league minimum or pretty dang close to it. And the only contract that we need to worry about in terms of expiration at the moment is Sam Nance. All right, remember, through all these moves we've been making, I accumulated a ton of players that ended up primarily in the rookie league, to where we had like 60 players there, and that rookie team just crushed opponents. I have since now taken virtually all of those guys that we signed and redistributed them throughout the minor leagues, which has now bloated a lot of our teams. It's not a crazy number, but if I get those all down to roughly 25 through making some moves, we will be in better shape. And to do that, there's a lot of guys, especially at that AAA level, that could go. This bottom end that is really poor. And so we're going to package those guys together. and see what we can get in return. And somehow our first move is getting younger and better immediately. Only one team coming back, but apparently there's something they like about these guys, and there's something I like about these guys. I don't know how well we are when it comes to scouting them, but 3 young prospects that are supposedly better than the 2 older guys we're giving up is a slam dunk for me. So I've been looking through for a good while here. There's a lot of options coming back for Joe Genord, who was our first baseman at the start of the year last year, along with an older 31-year-old starting pitcher. Both of these guys have no quality. They have no quality. And yet, in a 2-for-1, with one of them on a league minimum deal, we're able to get another league minimum guy in return. You flip 2-for-1, and they suddenly like it more. This is a guy who played AAA a good chunk of the year, played at the pro level as a backup. Didn't do great, but he's got good defense. He's only 25 years old, and he's a 2-star player. Next move for the roster reshaping, Reuben Lugo is a shortstop, just 23 years of age. He's about to turn 24, though, making league minimum. Our next move is to give away a catcher and reliever at the AAA level that, again, surplus to requirement, half-star guys in their 30s, not going anywhere. These are guys that we should just be releasing, but instead, in return, a $1.9 million contract for a backup shortstop at the major league level in Garrett Hampson. Cummings did okay. Fussell certainly did good, and at 30, is probably his last season for us before we move on from him, especially when he was making almost $3 million. But we'll hang on to him short term. Presumably, we could move on from him sooner rather than later. But Squire also did okay, and is just 21. So Cummings and Squire, definitely planning on hanging it onto them for a little while. But I do have one slot to fill in there, and then the bullpen is really thin as well. There's only 7 guys there at the moment. Could use 1 to 2 more, and Caballero isn't good enough. So Caballero is somebody that we will move on from very soon. Likewise, but that means a couple more slots. But otherwise, we're young. We've got some bullpen talent that has returned. That's going to do okay for us. And as for the lineup, there's some moves to be made here as we've started accumulating some guys that could be worth hanging on to or could be flipped for more talent, because we're a little too heavy at the moment in terms of the players we have here. We have 18 field players currently, so double what you need in terms of if you're adding a DH. So we have 2 catchers, but still nowhere near good enough. Yohan Gonzalez is only 20 and has some potential, but we need to stash him down at AA to develop or something. He's nowhere near good enough, and he was with this team all along last season. Catcher's been a hard fill at the moment, but we've gotten better with Salazar at first base. De Los Santos apparently is a bust. We now have high on him, but he's got potential. So, he needs to get stashed down below, or more likely, considering he's lacking much potential, we could probably flip him, like with Gonzalez, and actually get one decent, hopefully, catcher in return. But I'm just having a hard time finding a catcher. Garrett Hampson, who we just added in, is coming in as a decent option, and this was somebody that we just got for nothing in return. And look, 1.5-star, 2-star kind of guy, at just 28 years of age, easily could flip him for something even better in return. Marcial, we just brought in, Sam Nance and Luke Williams. Nance is suddenly just seen as a 2-star guy now that he's being compared to some others, and there's definitely some interest in Sam Nance, and he did a good job ultimately for us last year, but we've already gotten younger and better surrounding him, so Nance is probably going to make way along with like a De Los Santos, and you just keep flipping those pieces to get better and better. Short term, the team doesn't gel well when there's nothing but new faces around. But long term, it's these kind of pieces that you build upon. Cornegay, somebody that we picked up last season, is somebody you build upon. He doesn't quite have the contact, but he's got everything else. Lugo, we just picked up in one of these most recent trades, and again, we got him for nothing. You take him along with another piece, and you're getting an actual player who's good for the level, who's going to contribute. So one piece becomes another piece, and those pieces then become the higher caliber piece. Michaud's another one we just picked up, a great defender, and these guys came in for nothing. Uceta is where the team was at. Uceta was the starting right fielder outside of Pedrero, but Pedrero's absence, Uceta was starting in one of the positions anyway. I think it was Pedrero starting in left and Uceta starting in right. And he was horrendous. He was terrible. We played him in AA most of the season, but when we made all those trades, he came back up. You could see how much better we've gotten now, and he's a piece to flip because he really doesn't have that much potential. So I'm really happy with the progress we are making. Of course, there's tons of holes and things to fix, but we are 100% headed in the right direction, in my opinion. And I can't wait to see what continued moves will get us by time we report for spring training. This is going to be a very different team than what it was. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.